You heard
Okay.
the story about the mayor of Chicago called in the United Nations to protect him against ice raids? So
Good evening.
we could
Welcome
get
to
Joe
the
to call in the United Nations to a, what?
Good evening. Welcome to the Utility Commission meeting for November 20th, 2025. The meeting is now called to order. And Can we have a roll call, please? Okay.
Hammer.
Here.
Finkler.
Here.
Rule.
Here.
Andler.
Here.
Curtis.
Here.
Sanderson.
Here.
And Tome is excused as absent.
Thank you. This meeting has been appropriately public noticed for open records or open meeting rules. And the next item is to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll move to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second that.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Next up is public comment for the evening. Oh, excuse me. Any opposed? Next up is public comment. We don't have anybody present for public comment. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda include the approval of the October 16th and October 30th Utility Commission meeting minutes, the approval of the Utility Department cash disbursements report and accounts payable report, and the outage reports.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And could we have a roll call, please?
Finkler.
Aye.
Rule.
Aye.
Andler. Curtis.
Aye.
Sanderson.
Aye.
Hammer.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is to convene to close session per statute 19.85, parent 1, parent C, to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employees over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically regarding the utility staff wages.
I move we go to closed session per state statute 19.851C.
Second.
All in favor?
This would be a roll call.
Roll call.
So
Thank you.
that's okay.
Rule.
Aye.
Andler. Curtis.
Aye.
Sanderson.
Aye.
Hammer.
Aye.
Finkler.
Aye.
Motion passes, and we are now in closed session. Thank you. We are back to open session, and the next item on the agenda for new business is introduction by Utility Director Randall Myram. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Commission. I had approached Matt last week about putting together a slideshow to give the Commission an idea of my background and how I got to this point in my career. So if you bear with me, we'll go through that real quick. I did start out as a consultant for the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. The DOT for their mega projects. These are projects that usually go over 100 million or more. They hire consulting firms, engineering firms to manage these projects. And so I was part of pretty much the biggest projects in the state, mostly around Madison and Milwaukee. And I'll go through that real quick. Sorry, one second. So early on, a lot of the projects I was a part of, these are so massive, there's normally not one person managing them. It's a team. This one in particular is the I-94 corridor. This section that I was on was called the Foxconn project. It was in Milwaukee and Kenosha counties, and it involved widening the highway. And then you can see here, for the southbound lanes, we had raised the elevation about 11 feet. We're now raising the center, and then eventually we're going to move traffic over to the center, and then we raise the northbound. And these are just run-of-the-mill projects, really, for the roads. The fun stuff was coming on, but this is the corridor between the Mitchell Interchange and the Marquette. It's an economic project where instead of removing and replacing road, we did a lot of base patch repairing. So you'll see a lot of that. My memories from this are a lot of angry drivers that would stare at you very hard. But from a scale, they are often very fun to be a part of, just the dollar amount scale. So I'll just buzz through some of this. But this was a lot. This took about 8 years of my life. This is something that my specialty and my training at the time and my education was in geotechnical engineering. So I would be involved in a lot of decisions like this where we are improving a poor soft subgrade. So I would make decisions on the soil strength and did it meet the requirements or specifications for the road. And in this case it didn't, so our remediation process was to bring in this geogrid. You see that black netting there. And then build our road base. But I did a lot of that. That can get boring to the regular person. When you're a nerd, you're fascinated by it. So another exciting project I was part of was the Mitchell Interchange. This involved 3 cut and cover tunnels. This is down at the southeast corner of the 894 bypass. And this is just a beginning picture. But you'll see my pointer doesn't work with this TV, or I'll show you where the tunnels actually were. But can't there. So how this process worked is we would build secant piles. Now, my next slide, I'll identify exactly what those are. And the secant piles are right there. These are basically, we auger a shaft 3 feet in diameter, go down about 40 feet. We place in these rebar cages, then fill them with concrete. And once we do that, then we can go back to this stage where we start hogging out the soil in between the secant walls. And then we pour our caps on top of the secant piles. And then we put on our cross beams. We weld those to the caps. A huge process involved, and that's where I was in the ground for a long time there. I was the soils guy, they would call me. But this is always an exciting part in any tunnel project. This is where we're starting to build the road base. And the key element there is the bidwell, that big screed, and it's on a rail system. But once that's done, then we start finishing it. And then this was the finished product that you can drive through now. And that was an exciting project just because it was $450 million. Any type of changes were big dollar items, so a lot of preparation and planning had to go into them. But it was fun to be part of that one. Another fun project was the Hone Bridge. This is the bridge on the south side of Milwaukee. a lot of high-rise work there. Here, the crew is preparing for an evening pour. We did most of our work at night, because, you know, the peak hours of traffic were in the day, in the morning. But we spend a lot of time in prep work, just to give you an idea of where the home bridge is. That's the Milwaukee River there, outflowing into Lake Michigan. And now this is just some tasks that go on with bridge construction. This poor fella bent over. He is welding shear studs. And if you look at the arches in the background, I don't think it's this person in particular, but people like him, iron workers, had to weld millions of these in that position and just work their way south, and then they worked their way to the north side of the arches. So it's a lot of little things like that that it's hard for people to realize go into bridge construction. And this is the beginning of another evening pour. And then with road construction and the DOT, you do a lot of stormwater construction. This is just a classic. This is a classic Class 3 RCP pipe system, rain collection system. Done miles of those. But it was at that point that I was recruited by an engineering firm to get into municipal consulting. And that's where I got the bug. I spent about 8 years managing various projects for different municipalities, mostly in Racine and Kenosha counties. During those years, did a lot of large water main and sanitary sewer projects. This is a water main project. They're putting on fittings there with the valves. Just more water main. Large butterfly valve there on the left. And then a lot of sanitary sewer construction. In this particular slide, because the soil is saturated for most of the year, building a sewage force main, such as this, a dual line main, using iron pipe was not considered wise because corrosion would set in early. So we used SDR pipe, a poly pipe, but that machine in the background is welding the seams together. So this is a seamless system that ran for about 3 miles. This was for connecting portions of the village of Caledonia to Racine sewage system. And this slide here is another example of trying to deal with wet soils. That is called Hobos pipe. This is a specialty pipe that's made primarily of fiberglass. And another design purpose for it is for holding sanitary sewage for lengths of time. And it is much less inducive to corrosion versus our reinforced concrete pipe. So this is an expensive product. That made it more exciting. It's not your typical pipe where you have a bell and spigot. Instead, they're connected by collars, and it's supposed to be more watertight. I threw this in there. That very bored-looking teenager is my son. This was a time in my life when I realized my son was not interested in following in my career path. So this is about 9 years ago. He's taken a different field, but my dreams were kind of crushed there on this day. So this leads me into, I use a very similar method in my director's reports. I've, over the years, become accustomed to taking a lot of photos, to posting a lot of informational maps for the commission. And I was just going to give you a demonstration, and then hopefully if you like this, I would continue on in this manner. But this is an example of a water department report I would give there. In this particular instance, we're obviously flushing hydrants. So I'll create maps to explain to the commission where we're going to be when. I will often post maps like this publicly to let residents know when we'll be in their area, when they might experience some discoloration of water. I'll often include incidents like this in my report of, in this case, a curb stop had failed to that house on the right. And just making the repair, I often put up maps of where we have water main breaks, such as this one. If we have a number of them, it's often helpful if I put out a map and they're clustered in a certain area. That gives us an indication that this whole area might be failing. Often it's tied in with the age of that system. In this case, this crew is replacing the liner for a well. They also replaced the bowl system there. But I like to include incidents like this in the report and give explanations. Then I'll move into wastewater typically. In this case, I was reporting about a break we had going from a sanitary line that was going into a drop manhole. I include a diagram to explain where the break was. In this case, it was the fitting right where the drop is. It's hard without my pointer to show you what I'm talking about, but the drop manhole is designed to let the sewage drop and then collect down into the channel, reducing splash and keeping things orderly and keeping odors orderly in order too. But we had a crack here, and so I use this to describe to the council why this was necessary, and we had to take emergency actions. Incidents like this, I like to demonstrate to the commission about this crew here is doing a point repair for a sewer main infiltration problem. We spent months televising the sewer lines and identifying and locating exactly on the map where some of these infiltration areas are, and we then do this point repair. This kit costs about $600, and what they do is they apply this epoxy to a fiberglass mesh, wrap it around this bladder, and they insert it then into the sewage line where we have the infiltration. They expand that bladder, and once the compound cures, they deflate the bladder and pull it out. And I will often include an after video of that line, and you can see before and after where you had water coming in and how successful this product has become. And here, these are other things I would include, just adjusting manholes. And then I'll move into electric. You might recognize some of these photos. This was from the tornado in Juneau. And in these pictures, the Columbus team was there as well. It was a tragedy for Juneau, but it was actually an exciting time just to see how the different municipalities came together. This happened when a number of us were in La Crosse for a conference, yes, and right away, my lead and Dalton just bolted out the door, and a number of us others and directors met in the conference room and just started coordinating who's sending what. And, you know, how many vac trucks do we have going? So it was just really neat to see the cooperation happen. And I don't know, that was an exciting time, if that's the right word. But then also I include incidents like this. This is a training exercise where they're doing a pull top rescue. Yeah, enough. That's a dummy, yes. He was rescued. But then I'll give just some explanations, and then I'll include incidents like this. If we had a road closure and a power outage, and in this case there was a power outage, this tree did come down on a line, and I'll report typically what circuits were out and for how long, and what it was required to reestablish power. Then I like to include special events. It's very important to me to try and interact with the community. In this case here, this was what we called Touch a Truck Night, where we invite the public to come out and see some of the equipment and the crew in the utility departments. We borrowed this setup from, I believe it was Hustiford. I believe they own it. But and then kids will dress up in some line gear. The parents love taking photos of it. It's a really popular event. This was something else I like to do is participate in an electronic recycling event, making our facilities available. It is another popular thing for the residents of a community. And here I was approached by the Rock River Coalition, asking to put on a demonstration and build rain barrels. And they're giving a very thorough presentation of just how fragile the Rock River ecosystem is. And these are things I like to do too. And then I would share this with the commission about its success and how I think it helps the community. And this is another outreach I like to do. This is a high school class that will come into the treatment plant. They start out in the lab, take them into one of the final clarifiers. They make all their jokes about how it smells, and then we move on to, this is an oxidation ditch, but this is something that the teachers often like. I like being part of teaching the kids just how the science behind all this. So, and then I'm going to give the commission updates on projects, on future projects, and where we are with planning or where we are with construction. So this was a project I did up on Rhinelander. This is Oneida Street. That dome in the top left, it was the capital for Oneida County. And I'll just include photos such as this, projects and how they're going. I'll give updates on what stage we're at. This stage is the sanitary sewer. And most utility-driven projects, sanitary is the first thing they'll tackle. I'm going to drop back. I like to give updates too publicly of where we'll have closures, what areas to avoid. If we do have full closures, I'll often post the detour routes and then report to the commission in case they had concerns. Was this closure premature or unnecessary, things such as that, or if they have advice to give. I'll invite the commission. I like to give what I call deep dives if there's topics that you would like to know more about. I've given presentations on PFAS contamination and such, and I would always enjoy putting together another PowerPoint if there's any opportunity for further explanation in that. But that will give you an idea where I came from. That covered about 25 years right there. And if I'm lucky, I might have another 25 to go. But yes, does the commission have any questions? Sure.
What's your son doing?
He's in computers. So, no, I tried to sell that very hard, but he just wasn't interested. So I bought him a lot of toy construction equipment when he was young, but I lost the battle. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Randy. I appreciate that, and I look forward to working with you.
Well, thank you.
Next on the agenda is a presentation by Rupert Milkey for findings from the water site study. We have Jason Latha with us tonight.
Well, thank you, Commission. I don't know if it's going to be that exciting. It's a tough act to follow, so thanks, Randy. So as you guys all know, I'm not necessarily our water expert at Rupert Milkey, but I know enough to be dangerous. So I came, and since I was here for the task order, I said I will go through and kind of do a quick presentation on this, maybe a little background. Obviously, I'll try and answer any questions that come up about the study, but if there's anything that you guys have that I have to get back with some information, I certainly can on that as well. So many of you have been on the commission long enough to know why we're here, why we're talking about this study. We have Plant 1. Obviously, Plant 1's been aging. There's been some ongoing issues with Plant 1. The DNR has done some surveys down there and talked about compliance issues, bringing things up to code, replacing stuff. Last year, unfortunately, we had a softener issue with some valves. The plant was down for a while. We also had some leaking in the reservoir. There was some discussion with past commissions about, what do we do long term with this, facility. The building isn't very efficient. We have some roof issues, some other things going on down there with the building. And so we did a study kind of preceding this one that really kind of looked at, do we just continue to try and upgrade to bring into code compliance, Plant 1? What do we do with some of the aging infrastructure down there? What do those costs look like? I don't have the study in front of me, but if I remember right, there was several $1 million worth of potential improvements for Plant 1 to what I would call make it more reliable. And I think that's been kind of the term that I like to use, kind of thinking about Plant 1 is how do we make sure that we don't continue to see these offline episodes with Plant 1. We obviously have Plant 2, which is somewhat reliable, but obviously we're getting some aging infrastructure in Plant 2 there as well. So as we've kind of embarked on this study, we decided to take a look at, well, what would be the opportunities for a new plant? If we were going to basically move away from Plant 1, and again, this isn't a short-term decision, it's more of a long-term decision, but what does that look like in the city? And there's a lot of things to consider, right? There's proximity to the tower and other storage, there's the water main network, there's, well location, there's, water quality, and so there's a lot of pieces that kind of go into that. And I think that's what we were trying to attempt with this study, was try and at least get some ideas about where there are some suitable sites, are there some areas that don't make sense, and then I think the last study I referred to that preceded this one was a few years old, and we had some numbers in there for costs. I think what we tried to do in this study is we tried to refresh some of those costs again and say, what does that look like today, a few years removed from where we were last time. So the study's really thick. If you were like me, you probably pulled the back 100 pages off because that's all the environmental screening. And I said that's good if you really have some time, you want to do some light reading, and maybe you were up at night. But I think what really is the key part of this report is some of the front end information in the report. And so kind of diving into that, just a few things I wanted to kind of go over here. There was 4 particular sites. So again, there's a map. It should be page 13 in your packet. There's a map of the sites that we're going to be talking about tonight. There's 4 particular sites in and around the city. As you can see, most sites are centered around the west and the south side of the city. That's where there's obviously developable land. There is some opportunity for sites there. And after talking to the water staff, we felt like we narrowed it down to let's look at 4 locations in particular. A couple of things that we tried to avoid. You want to avoid industrial areas. You want to avoid floodplains. You want to avoid anything that could cause a source of contamination. It could be river related, could be highway related. So there's a few things that we try and avoid. And we're also looking for areas of high ground where we have good accessibility, where we have good water main infrastructure. So these kind of rose to the top. And so we, in process of this report, we started looking at these to be suitable sites. And again, those were kind of the basis for all the environmental screening. So of the sites that were chosen, there are 3 of them that are in the city. There's actually one that I believe is outside the city. So just be aware, like site 3 is not, but speaking with the landowner, there had been some discussion about potentially annexing that land at some point in the future, so we consider that a site, although that's a con, right? That's a drawback to that site, is it is not currently in the city. But still, we thought it was interesting through development discussions that we would consider that as a site. These sites vary in size right now from parcel size. What the report goes into is we didn't want to focus on that necessarily. We wanted to talk about right sizing the utility need, but looking at the parcel that's available today. So if it's a 20-acre parcel, we know we only need 2 to 3 acres for what we need. But again, because it's an existing parcel today, we looked at the entire parcel location. So as we kind of went through this, we looked at infrastructure. Again, most of the sites that we chose were in close proximity to an 8, 10, or 12-inch water main. In most cases, it's relatively close to infrastructure extension, so that means it wouldn't take a lot to get a large diameter water main out to these sites. The study did also look at the modeling of the system. If we would relocate a well to this site, and that would be the source of water being introduced into the system, how would that change the dynamic of the entire system? So would that change flows and pressures in different areas, and how would we connect that in? So again, we looked at that in the study, and that kind of weighed into the factors. Not that it's part of this study, but we also looked at elevated storage. We know that there's going to be a need for elevated storage in the future. That's part of some of the prior studies as well. But when we do a facility like a plant, we want to at least consider that site to also be used for storage, because you're right next to the facility. It makes sense. So again, we know we have elevated storage down on Tower Drive. A lot of these sites are relatively close. There's been a lot of talk historically about elevated storage being north, on 16, or, somewhere by the highway. So again, we didn't really dive into this as an elevated storage discussion, but we wanted to at least consider that could be part of one of these sites. So after we looked at all of that, we did the environmental screening. Again, we looked at those areas, wetlands, floodplains. We looked at natural resources, endangered species. And so we came up with a kind of a matrix, if you will, of the assessed parcels based on the environmental screening. That's on page 17 of your packet. And in there, you can see there was a few sites, particularly 1 and 4, that had some impacts to the larger parcel. 2 and 3 were relatively suitable for what we needed to do as related to the environmental conditions. So again, we're starting to see some rankings of sites come out, trying to coalesce around site 2 and 3 being more desirable than potentially 1 and 4. If you go kind of to the summary, and again, I'm skipping some stuff here in the narrative, but if you go to the summary on page 19, that's kind of the matrix where we talk about overall looking at well setbacks, locations to existing infrastructure, environmental considerations, hydraulic considerations. Again, we're kind of pulling these all together and then looking at the particular sites. So the result of the study really kind of coalesced around the ranking of the order of the sites we're looking at. Particularly site 2 had some appeal for all the kind of factors. If you're looking on the map, that's right next to kind of the parcel the city owns right now for the public safety building. Again, keep in mind the sites that we identified can be configured in different ways. This might be an opportunity to have some of the water facilities maybe to the north of the public safety building, which would be a little off the road from a visibility standpoint, but it would be tied to the city's property. That makes a lot of sense, I think, in one way. So I think as we kind of evolve that project, that this could be an opportunity to look at how we could kind of combine that. You'll also see that site 3 did score really well on a lot of factors. Again, that's not annexed into the city, but I know there's been some talk from the landowner about moving development forward in some of these different areas. And so as we would do that, we would certainly want to meet with that landowner to talk about potential options for where that might be. And again, I don't know that the box ends up exactly where it is on the map, but in general, somewhere in that area makes sense. So there certainly is some infrastructure that needs to be built to get to 3. It's not there yet. So again, that's a little bit of a drawback. But the way I looked at this when I was reviewing the report was that, any timeline on a new facility is going to be several years out anyways. There's a lot of budgeting, planning, PSC approvals, DNR approvals. So we would want to make sure that, if we identified these sites, we'd have time to do those things to plan for annexations or infrastructure expansions as part of this. The last thing that I guess I had in my mind when I was looking at some of these potential sites was, we certainly would want to look into the future, right? I think it's pretty short-sighted to say we'd replace the capacity and the functionality of Plant 1 with an equal Plant 3. I think what we'd want to do is make sure that it's expandable as we grow. And I think, at least I feel, and I think Matt feels, like the city's kind of poised on, growth moving forward right now. As we see that, we would want to make sure that we did have that capacity to build into our system as we go forward. So, obviously the report's tonight for kind of you to digest, ask questions. There's a lot here. As I had mentioned, we had looked at some costs and updated costs, and those are on page, flipping through the report here, so bear with me. 31, page 31 of your packet. There is some costs on there. As we kind of looked at this, we did add in here some land purchase costs. I got this from Mike Hornman, some costs right now per acre that the city is seeing. Obviously, you're looking at new well station building, filters and softener equipment, process piping, booster pumps, electrical panel, and then obviously the site work, SCADA and telemetry. You're at about 6.1 million. There's obviously some cost built into here for some demolition of the existing building. So there's some things there that would have to be removed if we're decommissioning that building. And then obviously, kind of going into some, engineering contingencies, constructions to make this project go. So again, thinking out that costs will increase. These are today's dollars as we, kind of enter into the future. The number's going to go up. I think I've heard Matt say, and I do remind people that, the cheapest time to do something is today. So obviously, these are just estimated costs. But as we move forward, there is kind of a process in here, and the report talks a little bit about what next steps are, right? And so if you guys choose to move this direction at some point, we certainly would want to do some test well work to find out, like, do we have the capacity in a new well? Do we have the water quality in a new well? Before we embark on this $9 million, or whatever the number becomes, we want to make sure that we have a suitable site. I'll give you an example. I just did a new well in the village of Oregon, south of Madison, a year or two ago, and the water quality, the well isn't that far from another well in town, but the water quality is completely different. It just depends on what aquifer you're in. It depends on, a lot of things. So there we had some different processes that we had to treat and build into the new facility, because once we drilled the test well, we had the pump rate and the water, but we didn't have the same quality that we did in some of the existing setups. So again, those are things we got to think about. So infrastructure planning, land acquisition, well testing, there's some pieces that go into that. And then there's the planning, the borrowing, the permitting, and the approvals that go into that. So again, it's a little bit further out on the horizon, but it is something that, we wanted to take a little deeper dive in to kind of start narrowing that down to say, where does this make sense? Where can we rule out areas that don't make sense? So hopefully that made sense to you guys. I know there was a lot in there. Like I said, I may not know all the answers tonight, but I'll open it up for questions. And if I don't, I will get you guys the answers back.
Thank you, Jason. Curious in the next steps, it talks about doing the test well prior to the purchase of the property. Is that a normal order?
Typically, no. But I think there is some discussion as to, if we purchase the property, I don't, again, and I'm speaking out loud here, but there's always value in the property in resale anyways, right? So even if we purchased it and we did the testing, I feel like, that could be repurposed and redeveloped for something else if the well wasn't suitable on that site. And again, I don't foresee the issues with the water quality here in Columbus. I'm going to make a joke here. You guys have the best water in the nation. We all know that. So you would hope there wouldn't be, but again, until we do the test well to know for certain, that would kind of be the real trick. So I think when we talked about it in here about, doing the test well and the purchase, I don't think that's realistic. I'm assuming, we'll have to do the purchase and then the well second, so.
Well, I'd just also add to that in our ongoing discussions with the property owner, I think he'd be more than open and would require that if we reached an agreement to acquire property, if it didn't move forward or we weren't going to do something with it, he'd want the ability to buy it back at the same cost that we purchased it for. And that might be a really good solution, a step with this process. The one question I have is on the land purchase part.
Your mic's not on.
Quantity of 3, is that for, I guess, how
3
does
acres.
that break down?
Yeah, it's 3 acres.
Okay.
And we put 3 acres in there because we talk about this 2 to 3 acre area. We don't know until we start laying out the facility what size we ultimately need, and it depends on slopes and setbacks and some other things. And so what we did there is we just said, 3 acres, let's just round it off to $100,000 an acre. It may be cheaper, but we wanted to put a placeholder in there so we at least counted for land costs. So we might buy 2.5 acres, we might buy 3.5 acres. It really kind of just depends in the end, so.
So what's the timeline going to mesh with our KV upgrade? I mean, that's gonna be an expensive project. And then this is gonna be an expensive project.
Yeah.
So the idea of doing two big expensive projects at the same time kind of like makes me think one of them should wait. The 4 kV upgrade is happening now, right? Soon?
2026.
All right, so we're gonna
My
finish
understanding,
that, maybe take a breath before we, do the preliminary stuff.
Jason,
Do
correct
the
me if I'm
water
wrong, but
improvement project.
this is like an 8 to 9 year process to get a water plant, correct?
No, I think it's probably a little quicker than that, but I mean, I would say best case scenario, the one, we just did one in Oregon that I was part of. We started it in 2017 and we're wrapping it up. But I can say that there was some intentional slowdown of that one. The city or the village shelved that one for a few years. So I would say probably realistically 5 years is what you're looking at. If you would continue to kind of move the process forward, you might be looking at 5 years out if you kind of keep your foot on the gas and get through all the planning and development and the approvals and stuff like that. So again, it's a little hard to know. I can tell you already the PSC is going to ask questions. The first thing they're going to say is, well, why don't you just put the money in Plant 1? But I do think that we have a lot of concerns about Plant 1 over the time, and again, at some point, looking at the cost of a new plant and the reliability of what you get as an end product versus repairing Plant 1 has been always the question, right? Like, we can sit here and debate that all night, but the report focused on moving forward with a Plant 3, at least looking at the site specific on probably a five-year window.
I don't even know where to start or even what to ask, so I'm just going to start rambling. So the top site right now is the site next to the future public safety building. That is a prime corridor yet to develop, and so I have questions on if that aligns with vision. And I know you mentioned you can have it set back and kind of merge it with the public safety building. Well, if this is a 5-year project, then those conversations need to happen now, because the public safety building is like full steam ahead. So I don't know that I have any questions or any comments. I just want to call out that the top choice right now is something that needs to at least be discussed, if it's even going to be on the table as we work through the public safety building planning.
I agree 100%, and it was kind of interesting to me that as my engineers from the water perspective were working on this study, that we were kind of kicking off the public safety building site. Now, the key about the public safety building site, in my opinion, and maybe Matt, you know a little bit more from the stakeholder group and some of the meetings, is I don't know that the parcel that's there for the public safety building is the exact end parcel we end up with. There's been talk about reconfiguring the roadway and what that, maybe the parcel becomes longer and fronts on 73 more and is shallower. I think once we start to coalesce around what that site for public safety building looks like, I think then you're right. Then the conversation really has to be clear as to, is there opportunity to look at an adjacent site for a water treatment facility in 2 to 3 acre increments? And how do we configure, if there is a right of way there today, we know it exists, are we vacating that, are we recreating it? And that gives us the opportunity, I think, to build this into that plan in that kind of timeline. Now, I don't think, and again, I don't know what the schedule is on public safety building, but you're right, they are tied, and I know they're moving quickly. But it'll be a little bit, I think, before we coalesce around the public safety building footprint and the exact site layout.
Yeah, but I guess my question is, like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, or do we work on both at the same time? Because what I don't want to do is screw up one while designing the other. You know what I'm saying? Because if we can consider the water plant in with the public safety building, then maybe we can better purpose this layout, we can be more thoughtful on it, but if not, we need to axe it off as an option altogether, saying it's just not gonna work.
The-
You'll
my take-
probably put thoughts better together than what
Well,
I'm saying.
my take on this, and Molly's getting this on multiple fronts, because the Plan Commission is going through the zoning rewrite and is looking at, how Park Avenue, future development, that corridor right now is shown as commercial, right? And there is some residential there, and is there a blending of those? And then that gets into, is the water plant rightfully suited adjacent to residential development? And there's a lot of factors here. But I think what I'm hearing is the public safety site should be designed for the future opportunity to place a water treatment plant adjacent to it. And that should be whether that's a 5-year, a 10-year, or a 15-year, in our discussions with the landowner who we're going to be working with on the public safety building and setting, the rest of that corridor up for future success, this should be contemplated as a potential opportunity as the best fit from the study.
See, I knew you'd say it better than me, but yes, I feel like we need to think about all the things at the same time, yeah.
And I will say, that's what my aha moment was when I read the report, was the water engineers over here doing their thing and the public safety building people over here doing their thing. And I'm sitting in the middle going, like, this makes sense. We need to make sure that this doesn't happen or that doesn't happen, and we figure out a plan. So my job will be to make sure that we don't get too far down the road and do something that doesn't make sense here. If that's truly the site that makes sense, and maybe we arrive at the idea that this isn't going to work on this site, and maybe 2 becomes slightly different. Maybe it gets moved out towards 151 a little further. Maybe it gets moved on the other side of the road, south of the hospital, closer to 3, or where Heritage Road gets extended. There's something there, but I think whatever we do moving forward with conceptual planning for the undeveloped land, there has to be consideration given to where this ends up. And that will be coming in the future. I know there will be more conversations about that, so.
I would just state, next steps on this is obviously this is something that I know Jake Tanner will keep on Randy's front burner and be coming back to this group for further discussions in the future.
Well, and I think just organically, conversations need to occur on it because of what we're doing with the public safety building. So I think that we'll keep it moving also.
Do we need anything further on this tonight, then? Thank you, Jason. Next on the agenda is approval of the 2026 budget.
So I'll move to approve the 2026 budget since we need a motion before discussion.
I'll second. What page is that?
I was just looking the same thing.
159?
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions, discussion, presentation by you gentlemen?
I don't know what was. If there are specific questions, I think and Michelle can help if there are, I think the major change that's been made since the last time you saw this was change of the wage. The cost of living adjustment went from 3% to 2.5% to align with the council. There may have been some other smaller changes, but I'm not aware of any major changes outside of that.
Michelle, was there anything that you wanted to point out? Thank you for being here.
The two biggest changes, like Matt said, major changes is gonna be in your capital projects and additions. In the first section, so this is on page 172. In your sewer utility, and this has been talked about, that this wastewater treatment plant had been leasing a loader. Dalton and Peter had worked on and met with some representatives from Midstate, and the better option is to, instead of purchasing that loader, go with a smaller one. So that is item 10 in the first section under the utility, sewer utility needs for $180,000. So that was one major change. The second one is in the water utility needs. It's item number 2, that Heritage Way water main loop that had been talked about, that had been moved from 2027 to 2026. So that is an additional item into the 2026 capital.
And that topic is the next item on the agenda, so we'll be talking about that after the budget.
So those were the only two. Otherwise, yes, there were just minor changes.
Thank you. Any additional questions or discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second, so I guess we are ready for a roll call.
Handler. Aye. Curtis.
Aye.
Sanderson.
Aye.
Hammer.
Aye.
Finkler.
Aye.
Rule.
Aye.
The budget is approved. That's a reasonable response. Next on the agenda is consider and take action on task order with Rupert Milkie on Heritage Way water main loop, which is page 174 in the packet. Jason, welcome.
Well, I'm back, so thank you. Kind of leading into the budget discussion, we have prepared a memo for you that kind of outlines a little bit of the history of what the issue is here. So in 2013, again, just to summarize here briefly, in 2013, the water main was extended from where it had currently stopped by the hospital out to Heritage Way, which was ultimately intended to serve Enerpac as they developed. We had provided some information in design documents to Enerpac when they developed, some modeling information, and if you look at the front page of the memo, there's a table. So spring of 2013, we estimated 1,757 gallons per minute at 20 PSI at the end of the cul-de-sac. They kind of built their facility around that, knowing that that's what they would get. After we built it and tested it, we were at 1,844 gallons per minute at 20 PSI. And as time has passed, they do some internal testing in their system as required by their insurance carrier, and they've seen flow rates at the minimum pressures drop historically. There's a graph in here that's kind of a hand graph in your packet. That's from them. It shows tests in 2014, 2019, 2023, and 2024, all showing a steady decrease of adding up to about 600 GPM. As a result, there was some conversations with them in the city. I recommended the city go out and test the hydrant now to see what we were getting out in the street, to see if this is an issue in their facility or if it's out in the roadway. We tested it at 1,694 gallons per minute at 20 PSI, so we did not see the drop-off that they had been seeing inside the facility with their tests. But as a result of that, we have been talking about creating a loop with the water main through the Gateway Park. That was something that we had talked about initially, hoping that the park was going to grow quicker and develop more than it did. It hasn't, so the loop hadn't been as critical. In 2025, we did a Brookside Lane street reconstruction project where we had installed a 12-inch water main down Brookside from Avalon to out in back of the hospital. That was in preparation of a future water main loop, not knowing that we were going to be here tonight talking about this. As a result of that project, I know representatives from Enerpac has met with the city and the utility, And there's been some discussion about moving that forward due to their concern about the continued dropping flows available to them and needs or impacts to their fire suppression system and ultimate probably expansion at some point. So I put together the memo, hopefully kind of summarizing all of that. Jake had asked me to put together a task order. The question was, could we still do something for 2026 as far as construction? And I said, absolutely. We could. We did secure the easements for the water main out to Heritage Way. At the same time, we did the electric easements with the hospital and Kurt Hansen, the landowner out there. So we checked that box as well. So we've been working towards this for a while. We knew we were going down this road, but I think that the memo tonight was a request to kind of move this up into the 26 construction schedule. And the task order before you tonight is kind of all-inclusive. It covers the design, the bidding services, the permitting, and the construction side of it. So it's kind of all-inclusive. Sometimes we separate the construction side out, but because this is such a quick turnaround, I just kind of lumped it all into one tonight for consideration. So this would be all the work that would be required from Rupert Milky to deliver the final water main connection. As a result of making that connection, our memo did state in here that we would see an increase post-construction from 1,694 gallons per minute today to 2,784 gallons per minute. So increasing the flow or gallons per minute at the cul-de-sac by about 1,100 GPM. So we're hopeful that will have a major impact on supporting development in the area, and it should alleviate the issue that Enerpac is seeing right now in their internal building testing. So that's what the task order is. Any questions on the memo, the pressures, the flows, the reason why we're doing it, or the task order?
I'll just share that this project was identified and earmarked for 2027 at the request of Enerpac. We have discussed internally. My take on this is moving it up a year is possible. It isn't going to change anything financially other than we may accomplish the project cheaper than we would in 2027. And that, the data is there and says one thing. We have a business that's kind of has concerns about it, and rather than, stick our head in the sand and say, no, we're waiting to 2027, I didn't see any reason why that this project couldn't move forward in 2026.
Any other questions?
I did, but I'm not prepared. So I'll just wing it. Is this, the estimated flow, is that an ISO preference, or are you getting the goal is the insurance service organization?
I don't know what their requirement is, Jack. I mean, they haven't shared that with us as to what they need for their requirement.
How did they come up with what they need? That's what
Well, what I came up with was we had always planned on extending a 12-inch water main to connect into Heritage, which we installed in 2013 as a 12-inch. So when you see, I ran a table here on the sizes of 8, 10, and 12.
Yeah.
The 12 was what we embarked on this year and put in the ground. So really, we ran the flows just to kind of see the differential, because we had done that even when we did the decision to put the 12 in the ground this year. So I just included them here for sake of seeing that there is certainly an increase in flow to the 12-inch. So we're looking at from the standpoint that we're maximizing the flow of potential that we can put in Gateway with the largest size that we can, not just for Enerpac, but for who knows what user comes out there, right? We don't know who else may come out there. So we just said, this is the most flow we can put out there, and that was what we were kind of working towards, is extending the loop to make that possible. That's kind of our decision, or the utility's decision, to say, let's put the 12 in. And that was decided. So we have a piece of 12 in the ground already, so we just plan on extending the 12 the rest of the way.
They asked for more fire flow water.
Yes.
They must have had a way of determining that they were at a shortage.
That was the graph that was in the packet, yeah. They're showing a decrease, they're showing a 600 gallon per minute decrease on their flow tests over the past 10 years.
Oh, that they're using more water, so there's less water.
I don't know why we don't know why they're having a decrease in their flows, because we're not seeing it on our hydrant testing. We're seeing a nominal decrease in our hydrant from the previous to the more recent tests. And the reason why I believe that is we do have some expansion on that corridor. The hospital has grown. We've looked at the usage records, and the hospital does have some nominal increase in usage. It's not dramatic. And so we did verify, like, are we seeing something on our end that's causing this major drop out there? But we're not. There is a little bit of drop that we acknowledge. I think it's 70 or 80 gallons per minute. And we can kind of equate that to some of the increased flows at the hospital. But the flows at the hospital are not like they've gone up linear. They kind of go up and down and up and down. So, if you take a 12-month period, we may have slightly increased flows over that. It really depends on when you're testing, too, as well. So these numbers are only a snapshot in time. So again, there's probably some additional testing and averaging if you'd want to verify this. But I feel pretty confident that what we're testing out there is providing slightly less water to them than we had been 10 years ago. Their testing is showing a different thing. So to Matt's point, they're coming back and saying, hey, we need more water out there. And that's what we're kind of working towards with this loop anyways. So.
And plus, it does give for future expansion a good loop for even the hospital portion also. So.
I think Joe hits on an important point, and as I've been here, we've had inquiries about opportunities to relocate or locate a business in the community, and oftentimes these are companies doing their homework. In some cases, it's the state who, the Economic Development Corporation, is putting out essentially an RFP for communities to respond to. They all want to know electric capacity, they want to know water capacity, they want to know sewer capacity. So anything we're doing to increase those services, I think will have a tangible, you don't know until someone comes and locates and puts a shovel in the ground, but it's not going to hurt in our efforts to bring more development to the community.
No, I'm in favor of moving up the timeline. Matt's done the analysis and says that's, not an imposition, so, yeah.
All right, I will move to approve then task order 2025-CU04 for the Heritage Way water main extension.
I will second.
That works.
Any further questions or discussion? No. Yes.
Curtis?
Aye.
The microphone's not on.
Curtis?
Aye.
Sanderson?
Aye.
Hammer?
Aye.
Finkler?
Aye.
Rule?
Aye.
Andler?
Motion passes. Thank you. That concludes our new business for this evening. The only other information in the packet was the UW Live Lines newsletter. Is there anything else before we adjourn this evening? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
I paused.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned at 7:25.